Good evening, you are watching ReNEWS in English. I'm Sona Tumanyan. I'll start today's broadcast with a statement that was widely circulated yesterday. The government has responded to the statement by the U.S. ambassador to Turkey, which claimed the United States is proposing to lease for 100 years the section of Armenia that connects the eastern regions of Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan. The Prime Minister's spokesperson noted that Armenia has not discussed and is not discussing delegating control over its sovereign territory to any third party. My colleague Anna Harutyunyan has gathered the facts and the reactions into a single report.
The Armenian-Azerbaijani dispute over the so-called Zangezur corridor is taking a new turn with an unexpected proposal from the U.S. The United States ambassador to Turkey has said that Washington is proposing to lease for 100 years the section of Armenia that connects the eastern regions of Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan.
Just like Azerbaijan and Armenia, they're arguing over 32 kilometers of road. But this is no joke. Going on for a decade. 32 kilometers of road. So what happens is America comes in and says, okay, we'll take it over. Give us the 32 kilometers of road on a 100-year lease, and you can all share it.
The Turkish president's administration has stated that it is unaware of any intention by the U.S. to manage the corridor. Yerevan considers the U.S. ambassador to Turkey's statement about leasing a part of Armenian territory unacceptable due to the violation of legislative principles and sovereignty. Prime Minister spokesperson Nazlı Bagdasaryan spoke about this in an interview with Armen Press.
Armenia discusses the issue of unblocking regional infrastructure exclusively in the context of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and jurisdiction of the Republic of Armenia. Armenia has not discussed and is not discussing delegating control over its sovereign territory to any third party.
Russian State Duma Deputy Konstantin Zatulin suggests that the U.S. proposal could be driven by a deliberate escalation of tension in the region.
I think that is an entirely realistic prospect. And I even think that all the recent escalations in Russian-Armenian and Azerbaijani relations are linked precisely to the fact that tension has been artificially increased by Azerbaijan and Armenia so that they don't have to ask Moscow about the Zangezur corridor. I think that the U.S. ambassador to Turkey has truly said what is being arranged.
We recall that it was previously reported by the Carnegie Endowment that the Trump administration had made a proposal to Yerevan and Baku at the end of May regarding the opening of the road connecting Azerbaijan and Nakhichevan. According to Washington's plan, the communication route would be delegated to an American company, which would in essence be the guarantor of the agreement. The State Department had declined to comment on these reports.
And now, yesterday, Nikol Pashinyan traveled from Brussels to Paris. At the airport, he was met by Alain Simonian, who was also in France. At the Élysée Palace, Prime Minister Pashinyan was received by French President Emmanuel Macron. We discussed the security situation in the South Caucasus and the efforts to establish a lasting peace. I thank France for its unwavering support in this important process, Pashinyan wrote on X. The French president reaffirmed his support for Armenia on the matter of signing a peace treaty, noting that the signing will play an important role for the entire region.
I am pleased to welcome the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, to Paris. I reaffirmed France's support for his courageous efforts aimed at establishing peace with Azerbaijan. The signing of a peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan as soon as possible could open a new chapter for all the peoples and countries of the region and for those beyond. This meeting also provided an opportunity to review our bilateral relations with the aim of continuing to deepen cooperation in all sectors and to soon formalize our strategic bilateral partnership.
Let me remind you that before leaving for France yesterday, Nikol Pashinyan met with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. In the joint statement issued after the trilateral meeting, it is noted that the European Union welcomes Armenia's ambitious reform agenda and expresses its support for Armenia's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and democratic reforms. The details are in the report.
4 days after his bilateral meeting with the president of Azerbaijan, Nikol Pashinyan was in Brussels for a working visit. He was accompanied by a representative delegation of 18 people, including Deputy Prime Minister Mihai Grigoryan, head of the Foreign Policy Agency Ararat Mirsoyan, and Interior Minister Arpin Sargsyan. The Prime Minister held a trilateral meeting with European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who emphasized that relations between Europe and Armenia are closer than ever.
We have a very ambitious partnership agenda. We have the Resilience and Growth Program, which provides 270 million euros to Armenia, and this shows the depth of Europe's commitment.
The EU reaffirmed its support for Armenia's Crossroads of Peace initiative. Von der Leyen described the draft peace treaty with Azerbaijan as a pivotal moment.
It brings an end to decades of hostility, and I hope the treaty will be signed as soon as possible. Rest assured, Europe will continue to help you on your path.
During the discussion, Nikol Pashinyan emphasized that relations between Armenia and the EU are developing rapidly and visibly, and that this is Armenia's strategy.
I want to thank the European Union for supporting our democratic reform agenda. And this is not new, but we feel that it's becoming more and more effective.
According to political scientist Benjamin Pokasyan, this meeting once again showed that Armenia is trying to move closer to the EU. However, we cannot yet speak of significant results.
If we want to achieve a qualitative change with the EU, we must at least start thinking about an association agreement. Armenia needs to start the process of leaving the EAEU. It is clear that Armenia will not take that step for a long time to come.
Addressing the visa liberalization process with the European Union, the political scientist asserts that it is not realistic until at least 2029. Within the framework of the Global Gateway Strategy, EU investments in Armenia are projected to reach 2.5 billion euros. The expert asserts that this announcement lacks clarity.
Charles Michel spoke about roughly the same numbers, but specific deadlines are not known, and it is not known who will make the investments.
Nikol Pashinyan concluded his working visit to Brussels with a meeting with the Prime Minister of Belgium. The Armenian Prime Minister had met with European partners in this format 2 months ago in Tirana. Mary Danilyan, David Yegyazarian.
Against the backdrop of the events unfolding around the Zangezur corridor, let's once again look at the Armenian-Azerbaijani negotiations in Abu Dhabi. What are the opinions, the conclusions, and the outcomes? My colleague Ani Hovanesyan has analyzed the meeting with experts Georgi Terlugyan, Thomas De Wall, and Harut Sasunyan.
To this day, it is unclear what exactly Pashinyan and Aliyev discussed for 5 continuous hours behind closed doors in Abu Dhabi. Let's try to understand what developments experts observing the situation from the outside foresee. Georgi Terlugyan, a professor of sociology at New York University, draws historical parallels between a potential peace agreement and the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, when a number of territories in western Armenia were transferred to the Ottoman Empire, endangering the security and future of the eastern Armenians.
It's a capitulation, but it's a capitulation in a dynamic situation, because what happens in 5 years from now? Will Armenia be as poor and disorganized as it was before? Or will Armenia grow stronger and acquire a new kind of army?
British journalist and analyst Thomas De Wall believes that the choice of venue for the negotiations in Abu Dhabi is a clear signal to both Russia and the West that the parties do not need mediators.
The one issue, which is a more international issue, is about transport and connectivity. It's about the route through Megri to Nakhchivan. It's about opening borders.
Is there any relation between these negotiations and the inner political situation in Armenia? I mean, arrests and accusations.
In Armenia, obviously, this will be a subject in the election. I think the Armenian public will be happy if there is progress and if Prime Minister Pashinyan can show something before the next elections. If he can't show something, then the opposition will say, you've been negotiating, you've given away all these things to Azerbaijan, and there's no result. So I think that will be the question in Armenia. Obviously, there's an opposition in Armenia, but I think we've seen recently that they can't put large numbers of people on the streets on this issue.
Beyond the direct parties that are taking part in these negotiations, what other countries do you think have influence on the outcome of the negotiations?
America is activating its interest. There's some talk of an American-Armenian company being involved. But I think what should be clear is this is not going to be a monopoly interest of the United States. This is not going to be an American deal signed in Washington. This is a broader international involvement.
Harut Sasunyan, publisher of the California Courier newspaper, does not share De Wall's opinion. According to him, Trump doesn't even know where Armenia is, and the statement by Secretary of State Marco Rubio does not mean that Armenia is important to the U.S.
Ռուբիոն անշուշտ Rubio, of course, knowing who he was talking to, with Trump, who, let's say, really likes people to praise him, Rubio, knowing this, spoke with lavish praise about Trump, saying that Trump succeeded in resolving this war, that war, and the other war, though those statements are very far from reality. So there, also as a word of praise, he said soon we will also resolve the Armenia-Azerbaijan issue.
And what about the internal political problems in Armenia? The arrests, the accusations, what do you connect them to?
Both Aliyev and Erdogan are very happy and satisfied that Pashinyan is taking these steps. Azerbaijan and Turkey are opposed to both the Dashnak Chutsun and the church, and I see that the church, the Dashnak Chutsun, and the opposition in general are obstructing Pashinyan's steps toward concessions. Whatever Pashinyan is doing, our enemies like it very much.
The intensification of negotiations implies a reduction in the risks of increased military tension, and therefore an opportunity to resolve all issues through dialogue. Our speakers agree on one point. All of this is connected to the upcoming elections. Annie Hovhannisson, Gevorg Sianisson.
Two sworn enemies, Armenia and Azerbaijan, are uniting to push Putin out of the South Caucasus, writes the British newspaper The Telegraph. According to the November 9 statement, the route through Armenia territory was to be controlled by Russia's Federal Security Service. However, that arrangement is now under threat as Aliyev wants to push Moscow out of the deal. This is Russia's last major bargaining chip in the region, which allows it to control trade routes and use leverage in its relations with both Armenia and Azerbaijan. The loss of that chip would be a serious blow, the article states. On the other side of this geopolitical realities, Armenia will participate as an observer in the multinational Agile Spirit military exercises, which will be held in Georgia and Turkey. Service members from Georgia, the USA, Turkey, Poland, Germany, Italy, Greece, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Lithuania, and Ukraine will participate in the exercises. The exercises will begin on July 21 with a joint US-Turkey airborne operation, which will take place near the Adana province of Turkey, says the statement from the Ministry of Defense. Today in Tianjin, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met with Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss the development of the relations between Moscow and Beijing. Lavrov delivered a message to Xi Jinping from President Putin and discussed preparations for his visit to China to participate in the Shanghai Summit. As you know, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization includes 10 member states as well as observer and partner states, including Armenia. In Beijing, the foreign ministers of the Russian Federation and Iran also held a meeting. This is another opportunity for us to exchange views on rapidly developing issues, the Russian foreign minister noted in his remarks. Lavrov and Araghchi emphasized the importance of resolving the crisis surrounding the Iranian nuclear program exclusively through political and diplomatic means. The Iranian foreign minister has again responded very harshly to Netanyahu. Araghchi suggested in his post that Israeli intelligence could have compromising material against Trump.
Having failed in all his military objectives in Iran and being forced to run to daddy after our powerful missiles leveled the Israeli regime's secret facilities, he now openly dictates to the U.S. what to say or do in negotiations with Iran. Inevitably, the question arises, what exactly is Netanyahu smoking? If nothing, then what does Mossad have on the White House?
And Trump has spoken about Putin again with his characteristic nuances. I am disappointed in Putin, but I'm not done with him yet, Trump told the BBC. When asked how the US president would convince Putin to stop the bloodshed, he replied, "We're working on it." In another segment, the US president described how his wife, Melania, reacted to one of his phone calls with Putin.
Times I'd get home, I'd say, "First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished." And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, "Wow, that's strange because they just bombed a nursing home." I said, "What?" So...
In Washington, negotiations have taken place between the U.S. and German defense ministers regarding the supply of Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. The meeting occurred after U.S. President Donald Trump hosted NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at the White House. Trump stated that NATO members should buy American weapons, including Patriot systems, and transfer them to Ukraine. According to Trump, the step should serve as a warning to Russian President Vladimir Putin that he is serious about ending the war. The US is also prepared to impose 100% tariffs on Russia in response to Putin's unwillingness to stop the war in Ukraine. Here is David Genjoyan with a closer look at the international news.
Forces of the Syrian interim government are gradually capturing the city of As-Suwaida, located in southern Syria and primarily inhabited by Druze. The Druze, who until recently were stubbornly resisting, are losing control over their settlements. It is anticipated that after capturing As-Suwaida, al-Shaara's forces will subjugate the neighboring Daraa province, and the Kurds will be next. In the last 24 hours, clashes between Druze and Bedouins in As-Suwaida have resulted in 89 deaths and approximately 200 injuries. EU High Representative Kaja Kallas has warned that Georgia could face sanctions, including the cancellation of its visa-free regime and a reduction in financial aid due to the Foreign Agents Law and violations of democratic principles. Georgian authorities are defending the law, considering it to be in the national interest, and have expressed readiness for dialogue with Brussels. Kallas said they will continue to monitor developments, making Georgia's European perspective conditional on the preservation of democracy. In Brussels, the European Union is discussing the 30% tariffs announced by the U.S., which are said to take effect on August 1. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has emphasized the EU's commitment to finding a solution through negotiations while simultaneously preparing for proportional countermeasures. Brussels has postponed the application of retaliatory tariffs on American goods worth 21 billion euros in order to provide time for negotiations. Israel has launched strikes against Syrian army tanks in the As-Suwaida province, claiming they were threatening Druze settlements. The strikes were carried out as Syrian government forces and Bedouin militants clashed with Druze units. Israeli Defense Minister Israeli Katz stated that the strikes are a clear warning to the Syrian regime not to harm the Druze community. In the state of Texas, the death toll from floods caused by torrential rains has reached 131, with 97 people considered missing. Governor Abbott has announced that rivers continue to overflow and that new areas could be affected. He also noted that a special session of the legislature will be convened at the end of July to investigate the causes of the disaster and the high death toll. Abbott expressed concern about the inadequacy of the flood warning systems and meteorological services.
For more updates, follow us on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Daily news and full coverage are available on our official website. I am Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with ReNews.